We're coming to you from the Franklin apartment today, where we're going to have not one but two exciting conversations. First with Grandpa Franklin, and then with Grandma Franklin. So don't go away. Don't go away. That was one of our audience participants. We have thousands of people here today to watch this exciting taping.
Thousands.
Marcus,
Oh,
why didn't you write the
please.
family? Mine and the family and your mother.
They'll all see this, okay? You're interrupting me, okay? Let's be a
Sorry.
polite little audience member.
Sorry.
Okay, with me here is Grandpa Franklin. Say hello to everyone, Grandpa.
Hello, everybody.
Give them a wave. Go ahead. You're waiting for a wave. Just wave at them. Go ahead. It'll be great. Yeah. Wasn't that fun? Have you ever waved on TV before?
Never.
Never.
Never in life.
Okay. Well, why don't you try and let's take you back to your youth, Grandpa. You think you can remember back that far?
I remember everything.
Tell everybody when you were born.
When I was born, the date?
Yeah.
I don't want to tell the date.
Just tell the year then.
Huh?
What year?
Well, that's the same thing. The date, same thing.
Okay.
They
Well.
know.
Forget about the year. Forget when I was born.
Okay. Forget the year. How old were you when you have your earliest memory?
How old?
Yeah.
As far as I can remember, age of 3.
Age of
Yeah.
3.
Yeah.
So tell us about
I
that.
still remember that. What shall I tell?
Where were you when you were 3 years old?
At home. I was born.
Where was that?
My hometown is, the name is Stolin.
And where is that?
That's in Poland.
In Poland.
Right.
So you were there from the age of 3 until how old?
Till about 12 and a half years old.
So you went to elementary school there?
I went to school.
Well, they didn't call it elementary
They
school?
did not call elementary school.
What did they call it?
Really
They call
different.
it
Over there, different.
just a school, and that's all, because it's not a big city. It was a small town.
Yeah.
Then it became a city,
Yeah.
like a small town is a small town, but when the people expand and they get a bigger population, so they make a city instead.
Well, how was school for children there different than it is here in the United States?
Different. The difference is down there is not regular schools. They rent a place in a private home, like a big room, like a living room, let's say. And down there they have about a couple of dozen youngsters, only boys, no girls, strictly boys. Girls are separate. And that's how you get your education.
Where did the girls go to school?
Separate
Separate school.
school, the same type schools.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a regular school, it was just like small town school.
Mm-hmm. And you went there until you were 12. What kind of things did you learn?
What did I learn?
Yeah.
I learned one thing, that the small town, there's no life in it. I had to make plans to get out of there and go to a big city.
So at the age of 12 already you were bored with that town.
12 and a half years old, I was bored, yeah. Because there was nothing to do,
Yeah.
and I had to get out and see some new faces, because the old faces, I got sick and tired of them. So I had to go out in a big city. On
Yeah.
top of that, my mother, should rest in peace, she wouldn't let me go. I got a passport without her knowledge to
see.
travel,
Yeah.
and she wouldn't let me travel.
Well, you were only 12 years old. That's not surprising.
That's not
that
the
you
point, but I had to get out. I couldn't travel without a passport.
Right.
So my mother wanted to get the passport in her hand to look at it. I said, no, you can't get it. You can look from here, from a distance.
And where was your father?
My father was passed away when I was the age of 3.
Uh-huh.
I still remember when he passed away.
You do?
Exactly the way that just like today.
Hmm.
And then when I got my passport, then I had about 8 girls to travel with from my hometown by boat to Kiev. And they went further, and I was left in Kiev,
This is at the age of 12?
12 and a half years
So
old.
you just left your mother?
Well, didn't have no choice. I didn't have nothing to do. I had to go. Because I felt I'm lost in a small town because there's nothing to it. Everybody knows you, and you know everybody, and nothing else to do.
So did you just run away?
I didn't run away. If I had this is not a run away. I had a passport, and I asked my mother to give me some money for traveling.
Yeah.
And if she doesn't give me, I'll get somewhere else. So I gave her an
Did
ultimatum.
she give you money?
I gave her an ultimatum. She gave me money, and I traveled.
So you said, Mom, I've got to skip this town at the age of 12.
Well,
And
she,
she gave you some
she
money.
didn't have no choice.
and you left.
Because I had the passport and I had everything to go for me. So I wanted to leave the small town to see what's going on in the whole world.
At 12 years old.
Well,
Incredible.
it's-
How much money did she give you?
I don't remember that. This is something too far. I
Uh-huh.
just don't remember. That time everything was cheap.
Okay, so 12 years old, Mom gives you a couple of bucks. You
Then I had to
say,
have traveling expenses.
well, of course.
And soon I came to Kiev. I was left all by myself because the girls went further,
Uh-huh.
a different city.
So you went to Kiev.
I went to Kiev.
All right, you packed up, money in the pocket, Mom, see you later. And at 12 years old, you went to Kiev.
Then I went down there. I went to school, same time,
Right.
a regular school. And I went to learn a trade.
Well, who did you live with?
Well, I went to see when you learn a trade, they take you in, they give you food, they give you shelter, and you don't get no money, but you just work
So it was like a trade school?
for something like that. And I learned that trade, and then when I finished school, and I learned the trade, so I had something to go for me.
So how long did you go to that school?
Well, I was going about 2 years,
So till you were 14.
something like
And
that.
what did you learn there?
I learned the line of the event I started to be a tailor.
Well, tell the home viewers. They don't
I
know
went-
what you did.
I went, so I learned to be a tailor,
Uh-huh.
and finally I had a good position,
Right.
and I made a little money, plus food and shelter,
Right.
and I felt like I'm home now, because I had everything to go for me.
Okay,
No
so
places to go.
you got out of this school when you were 14.
Well, I mean, I didn't go to school steady, it was a night school. Daytime, I had to work,
Oh, what did you do?
learn a trade. Like
Well, I'm sorry, Grandpa, but you've lost me here. So at night you went to school to learn how to be a tailor.
Yeah, I learned, I
And,
figured.
and
how
during
to
the
learn.
day you worked?
During the day I learned the trade.
I see.
At night I went to night school.
I see.
Because in the big city they have school for daytime and nighttime.
I see. So you did that till you were 14.
That's right.
And at 14 you finished that school.
Well, then I got a steady job
Ah, in Kiev?
in Kiev, yeah.
And
And then the revolution broke out.
how old were you when the revolution broke
Well,
out?
it was just a matter of a couple of years. 'Cause
So
the
you were
revolution-
16?
Something like that. And
Something like
the revolution, then, by the way, before the revolution, the Tsar came over to Kiev
Yeah.
from St. Petersburg. And I had to be on the corner of Kreshchatik and from the Klaevsky.
Oh, sure, I know that corner well
Wait a minute.
myself. Yes.
So when I went down there, when I was staying down there, I saw the police making people to stay on the side.
Uh-huh.
And I knew something is coming. So the Tsar, Nicholas, and the whole family was in a closed-in car, and they passed by and they went straight to the Chesky Lavry.
Oh, sure.
This happened to be an institution for the nuns.
Ooh, yes.
So because he had to stay down there instead of staying in a hotel, he stayed over there to be protected.
Mm-hmm.
And that part of the place is on the Dnieper.
Mm-hmm.
And I was happy to see the Tsar in the family,
Mm-hmm.
just through the class. And that was, to me, it was something new.
So you were in Kiev when you were 13. Did you have bar mitzvah?
If an orphan becomes half a year earlier,
12 then.
12 and a half years.
Yeah.
12 and a half years you become if you're an orphan, you become a bar mitzvah at that age. And if you have your parents living both, then you become a 13,
Mm-hmm.
the regular time.
Right.
But my mitzvah didn't stay my way. What stayed in my way is a small town, nothing to do. I had to get out
I see.
and find my life a little better.
So you were about 16 when the revolution broke out.
Right.
What was that like?
Well, as far as the revolution is concerned, it was very nice and quiet,
Mm-hmm.
no bloodshed,
Mm-hmm.
and everything was going normal.
Everything was going normal during the revolution?
The revolution, they expected a bloodless revolution, but it happens to be a bloodless revolution
I see.
in Kiev. So everything was fine. But the thing is this, after that, things started getting worse.
How so?
It was, what do you call it, civil war.
Uh-huh.
Because the generals from the Tsar
Yeah.
wanted to have the upper hand to stick with the Tsar. And with his ideas, but the revolutionary took over, and they were stronger than them.
So the revolution really didn't affect you.
It didn't affect nothing.
And what happened next?
What happened next? After violent was disorder. Disorder means that nothing could come into the city.
Mhm.
Everything was paralyzed.
Right.
So naturally, if everything's paralyzed, there's no transportation, nothing can be brought in, so was no food available except on the black market.
Well, how did people get around back then? What transportation did they use?
It's not a question of transportation. It's a question that they couldn't bring in anything to the city from the farms, like flour, some other items.
Well, how had they been bringing those
They would
things?
bring on with the horse and buggy.
A horse and buggy.
Yeah,
I've heard of that.
but they used to have freight trains too, but from far away.
I see.
But-
So trains and horses. That's how
Something
people
like that.
got
That's when the stuff came into Kiev.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
if everything exhausted, nobody could get anything.
Mhm.
So I happened to be without food. And so I happened to have an American man
Mhm.
in the same place where I used to stay. And he promised me, give me a loaf of bread,
Yeah.
about 3 or 4 pounds.
Right.
And they gave me a note. I should go and give that note to one of his friends. And while I was walking, the shooting was going on in the city.
Mhm.
It was a civil war.
Mhm.
And when you're hungry, you figure if you don't have nothing to eat, you'll die anyway.
Mhm.
I figured I'll take a chance.
So
If
so he asked you to be like a messenger.
something like that.
Uh-huh.
When I went down there, I gave me that little slip, whatever I gave me. When I came back, they gave me the loaf of bread. So I figured I'll have the loaf of bread for about 4 or 5 days. But I was so hungry that it didn't last more than once. I ate up the whole bread
In one day.
in one day.
Isn't that incredible?
And I didn't have no choice because the
6
stomach was
pound
empty.
bread.
The stomach was empty and I didn't have no choice. When you're hungry, you just...
When you're hungry, what can you do?
I mean, there's nothing available.
Right.
And that
So what year was this?
that had to be in 1917.
1917.
And you know what happened? That
Yeah.
man from the United States
Uh-huh.
saw the way I do things. He says, you would be perfect for the United States. I say,
Ah.
but how do I get there? He says that you have relatives, write to them,
Mhm.
and then you see what you can get.
Mhm.
So I start writing to my relatives, and they send me money.
So you had relatives in this country.
Yeah,
Who was here?
my uncles.
Your uncles. So
My
you
aunts.
wrote them a letter and you said,
I wrote letters. It took some time. It took about 3 years.
how much was a stamp?
That time, I can recall about 3 cents.
3 cents.
I mean, for a stamp from there to the United States was 3 cents.
Okay, so 3 cent stamped letter came to the United States and it said, I want to come to America.
I asked him to give me, to send me money. I should be able to come to the United States.
So did they?
They sent me papers,
Right.
and then I got myself all the papers and everything in order. Got myself a passport, my hometown, and then I left for the United States.
And how old were you then?
At that time, I was about 21.
21.
Yeah.
So from time you were 16 to the time you were 21, you were still in Kiev?
No, when I left Kiev to go to the United States, I went home to get my passport and all the particular things, because you couldn't get a passport anywhere else.
Oh, I
except your
see.
hometown.
So you spent some years back.
I went back to my
Poland.
hometown, got myself a passport,
Mhm.
and from there, then I went back. Then I went to Warsaw,
Mhm.
Poland.
Right.
And down there, I had all the offices where you can get tickets to go to the United States,
Mhm.
whatever steamship to pick, whatever
Right.
company. Then I got myself a. So I didn't have enough money, so I paid only for half ticket. I shouldn't spend the money, otherwise I wouldn't be able to go.
Mhm.
Then I sent a telegram to my relatives. I need more money, so
Right.
they sent me the rest of it, and I paid for the ticket, and I left for the United States.
How much was the ticket to come to the United States?
That time was about $85.
$85.
Yeah,
to
that was
come
a lot of money.
From all the way over there to all the way over here.
No, that's from the port in Holland
Uh-huh.
to the United States was $85 ticket.
One way.
That was third class.
Third class one
It's
way.
like one way.
$85.
It's like The cheapest travel you can get.
Cheapest fare.
Of course, you had first class too in the same boat.
Right.
But at the same time, you have to pay so much money.
Okay, so you hopped on this boat. It was a big boat, I guess, huh?
Yeah, it was.
How many people on that boat?
Well, I guess I measured about maybe 1,000.
1,000
Yeah,
people
that's-
on that one boat?
A steamship. What do you mean?
That's a lot of people.
1,000 people, is a lot of people.
It is to me, on one boat.
That is 1,000.
Okay, so 1,000 of you got on the
What's without
boat.
the sailor?
How? That's the audience speaking up, folks. So how long did it take to travel on this boat to the United States?
About 8 days.
8 days. And what did you eat and drink during the 8 days on the boat?
Then on the boat, they figure.
They do.
Of course, if you pay for the ticket, then you get food and everything.
Oh, so the $85 includes food
Everything.
for 8 days.
It's not a hotel. It's a steamship.
Yeah.
Then you buy a ticket.
Mhm.
That includes your food.
Right.
Chef.
What'd they feed you? Chicken soup? Baked chicken?
Chicken soup, eggs. No, they gave us
Lamb
different,
chops?
different. No, no lamb chops.
Oh, no.
They gave us different cheap food. Well,
Cheap
first class,
food.
what they expect.
Oh, I forgot it was
You
third
go
class.
first class.
What did they give you? Cereal?
No cereals.
No Fruit Loops?
No
or
butter
cereals?
either. It
No
was
butter?
It was margarine. They
Margarine?
used those days margarine
Yeah.
because
Did
butter
they,
is too
did they give
expensive.
you meat or sandwiches or soup or what did they give you?
No meat. We ate fish.
Fish. Okay. So 8 days on the boat. Did you know anybody else on the boat?
Well, you get acquainted with the people when you travel.
Oh, I see. So it was kind of like a singles cruise, or married people too.
Yeah, there was all kind of people. There was people that travel specifically to the United States.
So it's kind of like a huge love boat.
Then listen, it's look here, 1,000 people is not much, you know, on a
It's
boat like that. There's some boats.
Passenger bus.
Oh, okay. We'll get to you in a little while.
There's some boats
I
taking more.
didn't have that trouble.
There's some boats taking more than 3,000.
Okay, so the
But that's all it
1,000
takes.
the 1,000 of you frolicked on the boat for about 8 days. And where did you arrive in the United States?
I arrived in Brooklyn, New York.
Brooklyn, New York. I can't think of a better place I'd rather arrive.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got off the boat, and then what happened?
Then I went to my relatives. They
Right.
came to pick me up.
And they were in Brooklyn also?
Yeah, they lived in Brooklyn. They picked me up and I was there 1 week.
What did they pick you up in?
Yeah, they had the port, the boat.
But I mean, how did you travel
They
around?
picked me up with their car.
With a car.
Of course they did.
What year was this?
21.
1921.
Yeah.
So that's one of the earlier cars,
And
wasn't
of
it?
course, they had those days they had the Ford Model cars. With that, it was an open car almost.
Oh, really?
You know, the chip, it was a canopy tap.
Uh-huh.
You could close, you could open it. you
Was
could
it a
close
Model T?
Something like that order.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so y'all hopped in the old T.
Was no radio on it.
No radio?
No.
No air conditioning?
No air conditioning.
Okay, so you hopped in the Ford.
They took me the car.
And
They
they
took me
took you home.
to their house.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there for a week. Get acquainted with the Brooklyn.
Right.
Around.
And did you speak English at this point?
I learned it when I went to school. I learned English. Whatever
Oh,
I
you
could,
did?
I could learn.
I see.
I could go down to the policeman and ask him how to go to certain places
I see. Okay, so you stayed with your uncles for a week.
for a week, and then it happened to a friend. I got a job, and I was working from that time, from then on.
So you got a job in New York,
Moved to New York.
and then where did you live when you left your uncle's?
And I went to a place where I can rent a room.
Yeah. What was the rent? Do you remember?
That time about $13, $15
A month?
a month. Yeah. What are you laughing at? Yeah, those days was different days. Different
They
times.
certainly were different days. Okay, so $13, $15 a month. You had a little apartment, right?
Not an apartment.
No?
A
room.
semi-private room for my family.
Oh, so you
One
shared the room with somebody.
room. I
In a
didn't share with
private house.
anybody. I had a home for myself,
I see.
but it's like semi-private because you have to go through a certain spot. But
So it
they-
was somebody's house.
Yeah,
You rented a
somebody's
room
house.
from them.
That's right. I just rented a room.
I see. So you were like 21 years old now,
Right.
and you had a job. You had your own pad. You were a pretty hot young guy, weren't you?
Not quite. I had to,
Okay.
I had to save up money
Yeah,
to pay for my trip.
to pay back your uncles.
That's right, because
I
I
see.
promised him I'll pay him every cent. Then I'll come back. Then I'll come to the United States, and soon I'll get a job. I'll work and I'll take off certain parts and pay him off little by little until it's finished.
So how long did it take you to pay him back?
About a couple of years.
A couple of years. So how much were you making back then? Do you remember?
That time, around $35 a week. But you have to pay rent,
Yeah.
you have to feed yourself, you have to buy clothing.
Right?
Matter of fact, I did buy inexpensive stuff because I wanted to save up a little money to pay off my debt.
I see.
Then, after I was finished with my debts, then I went out.
So where would you shop for clothes? Woody's, Bloomingdale's?
Now, Bloomingdale's is in New York.
Yeah.
I was local shops.
Local,
like in the
small
neighborhood,
shops.
In the neighborhood.
I see.
They have stores, men's clothing stores, and some other things.
Okay, so how long did you stay in Brooklyn?
In Brooklyn, I stayed till 1931.
1931.
Then
Okay.
I came to Washington because the times were bad.
Mm-hmm.
Jobs was not available.
Right. In New York, you mean?
Yeah, that was after the crash.
So after the stock market crash?
Yeah. And things were bad and people just couldn't find any jobs
Mm-hmm.
because nobody had any money.
So what made you choose Washington?
I had uncles in Washington, D.C.
Oh, you had
So,
uncles in Washington?
I
You had
think
uncles in all the major cities, huh?
No, not exactly. Brooklyn, New York, and Washington, D.C. I came here to Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
and I didn't like the way they lived in their homes, the way they worked and
No,
everything
full
else.
of those things.
I just couldn't stand it
Yeah.
because it was something out of my line. I've seen
So you-
something better.
So you were like 30 years old at this time.
Huh?
You were like 30 years old when you moved to Washington, something like that.
Around that day.
Around, around that. So were you still single
Yes, I was single.
at 30 years old?
Yeah.
So that's pretty old to be a bachelor back
That's
in those
all right.
days.
I mean, I had to build myself up first before I get married.
Okay, so you're 30 years old, you're single, you're in Washington, a lot of hot spots. What'd you do for fun? Did you go dancing when you were in Washington?
I didn't have time for dancing. I had to work 10, 12 hours a day to make up the money to pay for the expenses.
So where did you work when you first came to Washington?
Where did I work?
Where?
No place.
Oh.
I came to visit my uncles.
Ah, so you just came to visit.
And I want to see how they live.
Right.
And of course, I see something better than that in Europe. So naturally, I didn't approve that, but that's how they live, and that's what it was.
But you decided to stay.
I decided to look for a place here in Washington and see if I can adjust myself.
So where did you live when you first came here?
In Washington,
Uh-huh.
I didn't know place. I stayed in a hotel.
Oh, so you stayed in a hotel.
First, when I came here the first time, I stayed with my uncles.
Right. And
But
then,
I didn't like the convenience that they had. It didn't suit me.
I see.
So I figured I had to get something better.
Right.
And I went out to look. I went out to look for something, and finally I found a place. And the person who had the place for sale,
Mm-hmm.
I was interested, and I checked up everything. I went to a lawyer. My uncle had a lawyer, so he said, "Go to my lawyer, and he'll take care of things." I went to that lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
and he told me that, as far as price is concerned, that's for you to take care of.
Right.
As far as taking care of the sale, I'll take care of that.
So you bought a place?
Yeah.
What you said you weren't working.
Well, I didn't come here to work. I came here to look for a place.
Right.
For
But
myself.
You bought a place without having a job?
Yeah, the place, this was a dry cleaning place.
Right.
And I figured I'll have a place to stay in the back.
Oh, it was a store.
But by the way, before I came here to look for the store,
Mhm.
then I was already married.
Ah, wow. Let's
Now-
go back for a minute.
That when I came the first time to Washington, I came by myself. The
Uh-huh.
second time I came here, then I was married.
Oh, well. Let's just roll the tape back for a moment.
Right.
So you came here for a visit, and then you went back to New York.
That's right.
And somewhere up there,
Yeah.
you must have met one of our audience members,
Right.
Shirley.
By coincidence,
Coincidence. So you were like 30 years old?
something like that.
Something like that. So where did you meet her?
I met her. First I met her brother,
Mm-hmm.
Sounders.
Where?
Well, this is something I can't say.
Now come on,
And
you can tell
anyway,
us. It's just.
He knew.
But we'll turn the camera off for a minute.
Yeah.
Where did you meet her? Where did you meet her brother?
Her brother happens to be. You see, the thing is,
Come on, you can tell us.
But
Nobody's
I
listening.
met her brother,
Yeah.
and he invited me to come to their house
So you met him where?
in New York City,
Where in New York City?
on the Lancet Street.
Oh, what kind of street was that?
It's a visitor affair,
Yeah,
business and pleasure, and people walk around from the neighborhood, and they,
business and pleasure.
yeah, I mean,
I think we get an idea what kind of
Right.
street that was, don't you?
anyway, so
Okay, so you
he
met.
invited me to the where they lived in their
You
apartment,
would never
Right.
believe it, but we went
and somehow,
So you went over his apartment,
right,
and
he lived in
here
his
was
mother.
there was this young, attractive lady there.
Yeah, she was very attractive,
Uh-huh.
except
And-
for one thing, she didn't talk much.
Uh-huh.
But
But
talked for her.
but you had ideas.
That's right.
Yeah,
I figured I'm
so
single,
right.
and I didn't have a decent meal all my life, so I figured if I get married, I have a decent meal.
I see. So the true motivation comes out. Okay, so you met her. He introduced you.
Well, he introduced me to her. of
Yeah.
course.
And where did you go on your first date?
First date, we went to see a movie.
Oh, what was the movie? Do you
Well,
remember?
this I could recall.
Did you spring for popcorn?
No, we didn't use popcorn those days in the movies.
Candy?
Not candy either.
Well, what did you
You
buy
only
her?
eat home.
Nothing.
Nothing. So you just went to a movie, and did you?
Those days in the movies, they didn't have no popcorn. Today, you go in a movie, you have popcorn.
Yeah. They have
And
drinks.
it's drinks?
Yeah.
They're not all. An ice cream parlor, they had some ice cream.
Ah, that sounds nice. Yeah. Okay. So
Yeah, but
little
she wouldn't-
movie,
but she
little
wouldn't
ice
pay the bill.
cream.
She wouldn't pay the bill. I said, this is the Dutch street.
You didn't. Now, what would it cost to take somebody to a movie and to the ice cream parlor in those days?
Those days, I imagined the movies would cost about 50 cents.
Yeah.
And an ice cream parlor, 25 cents, 35 cents.
Okay, so look, hey, look, you took her out, you were set back a good 85 cents. Then what happened?
So a couple of weeks later, we met again and so on and so on.
Oh, so you
Fine.
went out once and then you didn't see her for a couple of weeks?
That's right.
And then a couple of weeks goes by, you call her up, hey, Cheryl, what are you doing tonight? Something
Yeah.
like that?
I just went. I called her up if she wants to go out. She says, yes, I'll go out. I said, you want to pay the tickets? She says, ain't I have the money.
Okay, so then you went out again?
Yeah,
Where'd you go the second time, you remember?
we went on Broadway
Oh,
to
to a,
Warner Theater
yeah? To a show?
to see a nice picture. This is a show.
A movie or a Broadway play?
A movie.
Another movie?
That's right.
Another ice cream parlor visit after that?
Well, after that, we went somewhere else to have some coffee, cake.
Yeah.
That's
Okay,
all.
so maybe you blew 90 cents on the second date.
Well, it didn't matter
Then-
at that time because the money was
Big spender.
coming in the pocket, so you can spend.
Yeah. Okay, so then you went out on the second date. Then what happened?
Well,
Don't start off with me.
then anyway, then we decided to settle down, and that was the end of it.
2 movies, and you decided to settle
I
down?
mean, it didn't happen in 1 month or 2 months. It happened maybe about 6 months later.
Oh, okay. So now we're getting it here somewhere. So
Yeah, there you get it.
went. So you went out for about 6 months.
Right?
It's going pretty good. You say, hey, had she cooked for you during the 6 months?
Cook?
Yeah.
She didn't cook at all.
Oh, she didn't?
No. She
My
had to give it to
mother,
her
she
mother.
did
Her
last
mother did the cooking for her.
So her mother would cook for you.
She cooks for the
We
family.
used to go
not for
together
me.
out to a restaurant
Right.
to eat.
Yeah.
Nothing, that's all.
Okay. So 6 months went by, and you said, "This is the girl for me."
Hey,
Said,
babe.
you said, you said,
Don't
let's
start off with
let's
me. I'm
let's
not
move
gonna
to
go.
let's move to Washington.
I didn't say let's move to Washington.
What did you say?
After we got married,
Yeah.
then
You got married in New York.
New York.
Was it a big wedding?
It was a nice traditional wedding.
How many people were there?
Well, I imagine about 50.
50 people. Okay. So was there dancing? You have a band?
No, this was a religious wedding.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so no music.
No music.
Okay, so got married in New York,
Both of you.
and did you stay there for any time? Did you go
Yeah.
on a honeymoon?
Yeah, we went on to Washington. By myself.
Ah.
To look for a business.
So you came to Washington just after you got married.
not right away. You had a child first.
Oh, wow. Let's hear about that.
Your uncle was born
Yeah.
in a Jewish traditional way. And I decided I had nothing to do in Brooklyn, New York, so I might as well go to Washington. And I found this place and I purchased the place. And then I went back to Brooklyn, New York, picked up my wife and child.
Yeah.
And went to
So how old was Uncle Marvin when you moved to Washington?
that time. I imagine it was maybe a year old.
About a year old. Okay, so then you packed up the wife and kid and you came to Washington. How'd you come to Washington? Train?
That's right.
Okay. So you moved to Washington and you had bought a store?
What a stuff.
Where was the store located?
On Bladensburg Road,
Bladensburg Road
northeast.
in Northeast DC. And you lived in the store or above the store?
The back store.
In the
It was
back
an
of the store.
apartment house.
I see.
Stores and an apartment house.
Uh-huh. Well, what was the name of the business?
Bladensburg Cleaners and Dyers.
Cleaners and Dyers?
Yeah, he used to do dyeing. No, dyeing, the dyeing.
Changing the color of things.
Oh, yeah. That's what we used to call it.
Okay. And what did it cost to clean a suit back then?
That time?
First,
About 50 cents.
50 cents. Wow. Hey,
Cheap enough?
cheap enough. I'd
I
clean
mean,
more
the-
clothes.
The money was different than today.
It certainly was. So you had to work a lot of hours in the store back then.
Well, at the beginning, it was nothing to do
Why?
because it was six people had a store before me, and
Uh-huh.
nobody could make it go.
Ah.
So when I took over, I figured I have to try my best and see what I can accomplish.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I established myself, I had a little business, but it wasn't enough to pay the rent.
Mm-hmm.
So BF Soul was my landlord.
Uh-huh.
I went to BF Soul to the agent at the store I rent from,
Mm-hmm.
and I told him that I can't pay the money in time because I can't collect the money.
Right.
I said if I want to stay in the store,
Mm-hmm.
but if you give me a chance. So he checked on his in the what do you call
Ledger?
it?
In his book?
No, not the book. They had the cards for each tenant.
Right.
He put on the card the date instead of coming the first of the month. It came the end of the month.
So he gave you an extra month.
Give me a month,
Grace.
Pay the rent.
Yeah.
and went
So-
through. I went. They went by about 6, 8 months or a year. Then things started getting better.
Mm-hmm.
I could pay the rent in time. I called him up, and he says, "Don't worry about it. Just whenever the boy comes to collect the rent, just give him the check and forget about it."
Mm. And how much was the rent? Do you
The
remember?
rent that time $45 a month.
$45 a month.
Yeah, $45 sounds a lot. Those days. Today is nothing.
Right. Okay, so how long were you in that store?
How long? Oh, about 35 years.
35 years. Okay, so during this time, Uncle Marvin's getting older, right?
Naturally.
He started school.
Start school, in Eastern High School. First he went to public school.
Elementary school.
Elementary school was even public. And from then the next was Eastern High School.
Hmm.
And then we went to Eastern High School.
When did little Marilyn come along?
Then, a couple years later,
5 years later.
5 years later.
Almost 5
It
years.
just came to me in a flash.
That's
5
right.
years later, Marilyn came along.
but the funniest
So-
part is this.
Yeah,
Marvin was born in Brooklyn,
yeah.
and Marilyn was born in Brooklyn, and mother was born in
We went back there.
Well, how did that
We
happen?
went to the same hospital. Their mother gave birth to the first child, and the second time we went to the same hospital.
So you mean when you were in Washington and she said, "Oh,
No,
Bill,
they-
I think
they
it's
went
time,"
to
you
New
hopped
York
on the
and
train?
She went down there. She gave birth to your mother.
No, really. How did you
It
get her to
just
New
got-
York at the right time?
Well,
He sold the store and went back to New York. The same time she was
wait a
born.
minute.
Wait a minute.
So what I want to, it's not just to come in to no interruption. What I want to say is this: when this happened, I figured that's the best place for them because they took good care of them.
Right.
and that was everything I made to order, so I figured that's the only place. Then I came back to Washington and stayed here for the rest.
So just before she was about to deliver, you went up to Brooklyn? And how long did you stay in Brooklyn?
About 9 months.
9 months?
Yeah.
So you sold the store?
I sold that at the store. And then came to Brooklyn.
Okay, for 9 months.
And then I went back. Then I came back to Washington to see what's going on because New York was nothing to it.
Right.
And they say the party who purchased my store begged me to take over the store because he can't stay there because he can't make a living there.
I see. So you bought the store back from the guy you sold it to. I see. And you stayed there for 35 years.
Right.
So during this time, children grew up and they went to school, they got married, all those things.
Everything got together.
All of that happened. Can you recall any especially interesting stories from their childhood?
From my childhood,
Not yours, theirs.
their childhood, there's only one thing I remember. When I was on Plattsburgh Road,
Yeah.
President Roosevelt used to go to Annapolis.
Hmm.
So when he has to come by the road where I used to have the store. And I was outside. But I was outside in summertime, and I
Mhm.
saw two policemen running with their motorcycles. I knew somebody was coming by. So I was standing in the front of the store, and I was holding my hand in my pockets. And the Secret Service man looked at me. And I had to think about it. Maybe they think I have something that don't belong in my pockets.
He might have thought
So I
that.
took out my hands from my pockets, and then they stopped looking at me. Because
I
they
see.
said that I didn't have anything.
So you saw President Roosevelt?
Yeah, because...
How close were you to him?
Within about 6 feet.
Wow, so you got a good look at him.
No, because he was close to the curb.
Hmm.
Because he was sitting on the right-hand side, not on the left-hand side.
Did you see any other presidents?
Well, I've seen Roosevelt in person.
Right.
That's number one.
Yeah.
And the next president was Kennedy.
You saw Kennedy?
Yeah.
Where'd you see him?
Then he was inaugurated.
Oh, you were at the inauguration?
Yeah. I was standing on Pennsylvania Avenue, near the Washington Hotel,
Hmm.
and he was coming by in an open car, and I saw him just like I see anybody else.
He looked just like anybody else. Huh?
I mean, came so close. And, say this, it was like, you know what else in heaven? I have even the paper, the picture, I was in it.
Yeah. You were in a picture with the president?
Not with the president, but I mean the crowd.
Oh. Okay. Oh, wow, that's
Yeah, but I can-
pretty
I can-
exciting. Well, any other presidents?
And I remember that's the only president I saw in person.
So 2 presidents. Look, it's not bad. 2 presidents is not bad.
I mean, that's the see, at least one,
Uh-huh.
there's nothing.
So what you've certainly seen some incredible things happen in your lifetime. New inventions, achievements of man, right? Are there any things that particularly stick out? For example, you remember when they landed on the moon?
I sure do.
Granny, can you do that later? Thank you.
I sure do.
Yeah. Where were you when the first man set foot on the moon?
Right here in Washington, D.C.
Yeah. And you watched it on television?
Absolutely.
Pretty exciting, huh?
It was exciting.
What about, you remember airline travel? When airline travel started to be very popular?
Yes. Matter of fact, I saw the first plane that was made in the United States.
You did?
Yeah,
Where did you see that?
in my hometown.
In your hometown? You mean over the ocean?
Over the ocean, yeah. That was, it was like, you see I never saw an airplane in my life,
Mhm.
as far as that's concerned. But it happened that an airplane came, the same way they show in here in the movies from way back.
Mhm.
What do you call it, the hawk?
The Hawk?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, there was a big structure.
Mhm.
And it landed on a flat ground on the outskirts of my hometown.
Mhm.
And that was the time I saw it happen.
Mhm. Do you remember when television started?
Well, I imagine about in the early 40s.
Do you remember your first TV? First TV you bought?
The first TV I bought, let me think about it, that was in the late 50s.
In the late 50s? And where'd you buy it?
We had to buy from George's.
George's. How much did it cost? Do you remember?
That time, it was a small set. I imagine it was about $250.
So that's pretty expensive back
And
then.
at that time was when the TV came out,
Yeah.
it was expensive.
Yeah.
And then later it started coming
So,
down.
so you bought the TV and brought it home.
Yeah.
And was that a big day at the Franklin house?
Yeah, naturally, you could see what's going on in the world.
Yeah, so you brought it home, you hooked it up, you plugged it in.
Absolutely.
Everybody gathered around.
That's right.
You remember that day?
Absolutely, it was very nice.
Yeah.
You
And,
saw,
and when you turned it on, what'd you see?
you saw whatever came up.
Well,
Yeah,
I
that's all.
figured that, but like, what was on?
I tend to remember now. I had so many things in my mind that time, so I couldn't remember.
Yeah, I guess so. So, okay, so that was the first TV day. You remember when color TV came out?
Color TV came out in the 60s.
Yeah.
Well, I couldn't afford that color TV. It was too expensive for me. I could go to a store where they sell television and I could watch
Yeah.
color television.
Yeah. So what year was it when you moved from Bladensburg Road to Eastern Avenue?
That was in 1955.
1955. And that was your first house then?
First house.
So,
And the last house.
and the last house.
Because I
So,
stayed there for 14.5 years. Then I sold it and I didn't even get to buy a house anymore.
so what was it like shopping for that house? What was it like shopping for this house? At that time, the children, how old were the children? How old were the children then?
That time,
That's the question.
well, Marvin came out with the service.
So he was grown.
He was grown, so is Marilyn.
Oh, so kids
Both
were
grown.
grown.
Yeah.
So you went shopping for the house, and what made you buy that house?
I want to have the feeling to have to own a home.
Mm-hmm.
But I said that a long time or not, I didn't know that. But I figured I want to have the comfort and see what it means to own your own home.
Mm-hmm. But was there something about that house that made it especially attractive to you?
In first place, it was privately owned.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. Number two, the vicinity changed and everything else, so that gave me pleasure.
It was a nice neighborhood, you're saying.
Nice at that time.
Mm-hmm. How much did that house cost? Do you remember?
About $59.50.
$59,050.
$15,950.
$16,000. About
Yeah,
$16,000.
that's- yeah.
Whoa. So that.
Well, I had a beautiful home.
Oh,
I
yeah.
had everything I wanted.
Right.
A beautiful yard,
Right.
nice trees,
Right.
fenced in.
Right.
What else can you ask?
I can't think of anything.
No, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
you got everything for your money.
Right.
Cheaper than yours.
Yeah, it sure
Wait a
was.
minute. And it was a solid brick house,
Right.
and we had each child had a room for themselves. And that's what I was looking forward, that they should have separate rooms for themselves and
Right.
live in comfort.
So it's a good deal. 16 grand, bought the house, and at this time, where were you working? When you lived in that house?
I still had the store.
Still had the store for how much longer?
Well, before the riots, I got out of the store,
Mm-hmm. What year was that?
68,
Mm-hmm.
and then I went to work for somebody else. I made a nice wage, and I figured that's the best I could do.
Now, you never owned a car all these years.
Never.
Never owned a
I
car.
intended to buy a car at the beginning, but I couldn't afford to pay for gas and repairs, so I
Right.
didn't buy it.
Yeah, but later on, you could have afforded
Yeah,
a
but the
car.
thing is this, I didn't have time for it.
Ah,
I had to work too long hours.
yeah.
So, if you work too long hours, well, what will happen to the car? Stay outside, pay insurance, and not get out of it?
Yeah, I guess it would have been silly.
I mean, it's, and if somebody does damage to the car, you have to fix it.
This is
You have
true.
to stay.
This is true.
They're like,
All these things are true. So do you remember the children's first car?
yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, Marvin came out of the service.
Yeah,
He wanted to have a car.
right.
So,
I said, let him have it.
when he went in service, he didn't drive no car.
Uh-huh.
But while he was in the service,
They taught him how to
we
drive.
taught him how to drive.
Yeah.
And when he was driving the first time on his base,
Yeah.
He was scared to death.
Yeah?
Because he was scaring officers,
Yeah?
and he was the driver. He figured, let's hope nothing happens.
Let's hope.
So when I was big, he came here and he knew how to drive a car. He went to Osmond Chevrolet.
Oarsman Chevrolet. And did you get your way?
No, those days they get that. Those days they were honest deals. Honest deals.
Okay, so you went to Oarsman.
To Osmond, and Marvin had a few dollars saved, and I gave him a little help.
Mm-hmm.
He got himself a Chevrolet, Bel Air.
A Bel Air Chevrolet. And how
That
much
was
did
a
that?
nice-
How much did that set him back?
I think about how much did it cost?
Yeah.
About $2,200.
$2,200. And you paid cash?
I don't remember that. I paid part the cash.
Partly payments.
Yeah.
I see. What about Marilyn's first car?
Then first car?
I bet that was fun. Do you remember that?
Yeah. She had a beautiful car.
Really beautiful?
Yes.
Who was it?
I can't remember the name, but it was a
Oh,
real,
you didn't have
it looked
a
like a
car.
Lincoln.
It
I mean, the car itself looked like a Lincoln.
Looked like a Lincoln?
A real long car,
What color was it?
dark green.
Dark green
And it
car.
was beautiful.
And did you buy it for her or what?
No,
How'd
no,
that work?
She got married.
Ah,
That time before she got married, she didn't drive no car at all.
really?
That's
Your father taught her how to drive a car.
Okay, thank you, audience. Okay, so you've had some pretty exciting times, needless to say.
There's a lot more, but it's hard to remember everything at one shot.
I know it's hard. I mean, this is the first time you've ever been on videotape, isn't it? Have you ever been on TV or radio before?
I happened to be before I left Poland.
Mm-hmm.
I happened to be in a shop where I was working, and they took pictures of us,
Mm-hmm.
and the newsreel showed in the United States, and my own cousins, being in Brooklyn, they went to see the movies, and they saw the newsreel. They saw me right there before I came to the country
On film.
on film. Yeah.
Big deal.
You know what else?
What else?
When we were living in Brooklyn, New York, I went to see the Easter Parade
Mm-hmm.
on Fifth Avenue.
Right.
I asked Grandma if she wants to go. She says, no, you go. I took your Uncle Marvin. He was a little guy this size that time. I
That
put him
big,
on my
huh?
shoulder.
Uh-huh.
Anyway,
How old was he then? 8, 9 years old?
no, he was about 3 years, 3.5, 4 years old.
Okay.
Anyway, I took him down there while we were in Brooklyn that time. So I went to 9 months we were in Brooklyn, so I went down there to see Easter Parade.
Uh-huh.
And while I was walking on the sidewalk near the Radio City, down there in the Rockefeller Center, I had to put him on my shoulder because he wanted to see what's going on.
Right.
And Pat A. News, a newsreel company,
Uh-huh.
took pictures from the crowd.
Uh-huh.
And I was in the picture, and Marvin was in the picture. And friends of mine went to see our movie on Broadway, and they saw the newsreel, me and Marvin in the picture. And when I met up with them on Broadway, they say, you have to pay for the ticket to see your face.
Wow. That's pretty
I
incredible.
mean, I didn't know that I was in the movies.
Well, how would you know?
Because when they flash the picture, you don't even know whether you're in it or not.
Yeah.
Well, you see, you couldn't stay in one place. And on Fifth Avenue, you had to walk.
Mm-hmm.
The police didn't allow anybody to stay in one place.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not supposed to stop. You're supposed to walk either direction.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you this. We don't have much time left.
All right.
But I'll tell you this. You know, the wonder of videotape, this could be stored and kept and looked at 10, 20, 50, maybe 100 years later from now. Perhaps your great-great-grandchildren might see this one day.
Yeah, that would be a very interesting thing.
I think it would be.
Absolutely.
Now, if you could say to them, perhaps this will be viewed in the year 2000, 2020, 2050. If you could give them your philosophy or some piece of advice, what would it be?
Take it easy, live a straight life, and don't get in trouble.
Now, that's a pretty good philosophy, but you haven't always stayed out of trouble now, have you?
That isn't it. Trouble comes accidentally. Sometimes you don't expect that, but it
He was
comes.
always in
And if it comes, you have to know how to get out.
Yes, this is true. This is true. In looking back over the decades and decades that you've been alive, is there anything that you wish you could have changed or done differently?
No, the way things go forward, I'm happy with what I saw up to now.
Yeah?
And I hope to stay at the year 2000.
Okay. Well, it's okay with me if you have it.
Hi, I'm over at Granny Franklin's house, and we're going to talk about where Granny came from and her life in the United States and coming to the United States. Granny, wave hello to the people watching you.
Right.
Now, I understand you were born in 1904, February 20th to be exact. Where were you born?
And that time was Russia.
At
Russia, Poland.
Russia and Poland.
Polina Gubern.
Okay.
That's the state.
What was your town called?
Rovna.
And was it one of these small towns?
No, it was a medium size, not so small enough. I don't know how many people there. You know, we don't count them.
Can you describe a little about the town? I can imagine it was much different from Silver Spring.
Oh, sure, Europe is different out there.
What can you tell me about the town? How it's different?
It was a nice town, not too small. All kind of business, traveling. And my mother was there, my sister, my brother, the two children.
Okay, there were 3 children. You lived with your mother, and there was you, and you said a brother and sister, right? Now, your brother is Joe. How old is Joe? How much older?
And they're about different, 2 years, 3 years.
And your sister?
Sister, she's the oldest.
Right.
This one, I was the second, and I was the last one.
Oh, your brother Joe is younger than you then.
In the, we lived, that was a nice quiet town, never, our friends, children, they grew up.
How long did you stay there? How long did you live in that
I
town?
came in, until we left for the United States. I really don't know that.
Don't remember when you left?
I left in 24 for the United States.
Oh, so you left in 24, so you were about, you, 20, okay, you were about 21, right? Okay. What did you do over there? You went to school, right? While you were...
There was a school, and then I didn't work there. My mother had a small business, so we helped out.
What kind of business was it?
In the market used to be stands, and they used to have samovar, eggs, there used to be the Gentile people, from the villages, used to come in the big city to buy like salt powder, for their
Oh,
homes.
basic
Yeah.
things?
Basic things, and they used to drink tea, and it was fresh, rolls. They used to buy, and they used to fry fish, for them they like hot fish, and they didn't have it in the villages.
So, did your mother have one of the stands
Yeah,
then?
one of those stands.
And it was like a cooking?
Yeah, to make a living. She made things like and tea has been a samovar,
Right.
the tea, and summertime was cold things like sodas and all kind of bottles. They
And,
had to make a living. My father was here.
oh, your father came here. When
He was here.
when did your father come here?
But he was here when we were left over there because they lost out. They couldn't get.
Couldn't leave, right?
So they had to wait until everything quiet down. The same thing. Time came the revolution, and this and that, all kind of things.
So your father came over right before the war,
Before us, anyway, he came here.
and then you were apart for, I guess,
For quite a few
6
years.
years or so until the war blew over.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you had to wait until everything quieted down. You should be able to travel.
Right. So you and Joe and your sister, what was your sister's name?
Rose.
Rose, okay. You and Joe and Rose helped your mom out at her store and worked there. What was your school like? How long did you go to school? Did you go to school?
In Europe, here you must go.
Right.
See, over there you mustn't go. Most of it, the rich children used to go to school. The other ones, they didn't let you in, so you learned by yourself, you read books and you learned how to write.
Right. And I guess your time you needed to work on helping your mom.
In full school, you didn't get there.
Mm-hmm.
Full children. They learned that they had homes, the middle class.
Mm-hmm. So, said in about 1924, you finally could
They came here.
come to America. The war was over, the revolution had passed, right?
The kids and everything started. Younger.
When did you find out that you'd be coming to America? Do you remember?
You see, while the war and all that thing was going on, we couldn't hear from America. You
Right,
couldn't
what
write.
was happening?
You
You
couldn't
can't.
write back and forth.
Mhm.
So I waited until everything was over. Then my father found, you didn't know where he is and you didn't know where we are.
Right.
After that, when I find out where you are, where we are, we found out us. So we sent us a letter, and then a man from America came to Europe. He sent us that time $50.
All right. Your dad sent
Yeah.
you $50 with the man.
With the man.
Okay.
And then, that we found each other, we started to get together, you see.
Right.
So, it takes a little time over there. You can, until they give you the permission, like passports, and all that stuff.
Mhm. How long did it take until you were finally over?
It took a couple of years.
Like 2-3 years.
Yes,
And do you remember the day you left Russia to come to America?
we had a date, then to come to the boat.
Right.
Russia. You had to make your passport, your papers, get the papers from here that they want you here.
Right.
You see?
That you had someone to bring you
They
over.
have to send you papers that you wanted.
Mhm.
See? They had to fill that out and over there. Takes a little while, until you do something. So in 24 we came.
Now, do you remember that one day, though, that you knew you were leaving? That you
Yeah,
went to
we
the
got-
right? You knew the date.
We had a date and then come to Warsaw.
Mhm.
And over there, give all the documents and
Right.
the papers. And the ticket, you had to go on a boat.
Mhm.
See, LA, you had to go. They don't let you up just like that. And then they don't let you in without any papers that they want you here.
Right.
So we had to wait a little while, Finally we got together.
Okay. Do you remember how you felt though that day that you left?
We came
You
here.
knew the date. Do you remember how you felt? You, Shirley Frank.
You just picked up and you went.
So you were just kind of going along with the flow. You didn't
That's
care if you
right.
left or not.
No, I live in Europe. We lived a lousy life over there. So
Mhm.
nothing to lose. See?
So you didn't. Were you really excited
I
about
wasn't
coming
so
to
lost.
America?
We were happy to come here and get together with family.
Right.
You see.
And did you have other relatives in America besides your
in
father?
Detroit, Michigan, with uncles, cousins.
Detroit, huh?
Yeah.
Have you been to Detroit?
Once I
Was that
I
around?
visit my uncle and the cousins. I stayed like that because
Hmm. Was it cold?
the family, the uncle.
Right. Was it cold? When did you go?
No, I went
Cold
in
season.
spring or summer. Over there, most of the family is there. We were the only ones anymore.
Ah. What made you come to New York?
Because
If-
my father was there.
What was your father doing in New York?
Then he was something like Elena, we got together, then my brother came. And then after it, when Hitler came,
Right.
my sister lived over there with the two children. My mother
Rose was still
Yeah.
over in Russia.
yeah, and mother was she was in Germany.
Oh, in Germany.
And that's when Hitler came.
Now, how did Rose get to Germany? You came from Russia, right?
And we lived in Europe. We lived a family, And the man's brother, in the First World War, he was 17 years old, they took him into the army, the Russian.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a war. So the Germans took him as a prisoner. My brother-in-law.
Your brother-in-law. Rose was married before the war?
No. Parents, they took him in a young guy. And he was there in Germany, took him over as a prisoner.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know for some time where he was. Finally, he started to write to the mother, to the brothers and sisters. To the
Right.
And then he liked Germany. He came home. When he came home, he met my sister. He was
Oh, I see.
in the late 20s, or when they took him in the 17 years old.
Ah,
A few years later, he was already in the 20s. He met his mother, his daughters, and the children. And that's how they got together and they got married.
so he didn't know Rose before he went.
We lived by
but,
his brother.
Oh, I see. So when he came home, that's when he met Rose.
Yeah. And the sister-in-law told him there's a very nice girl, but she's going to America. So finally they got married, and she went to Germany instead of to
Mhm.
America. See?
Stayed with him because he
Yeah.
liked Germany then.
He like there, and they established themselves over there. He was a real good tailor, that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then they rented a little together with the Ravenclaw sister, and they used to sell children's socks, aprons, house dresses, and they made a living over there. It was very nice. Then came Hitler. It's a full of guard near the door.
Mm-hmm.
She's coming. And my mother heard that. She was jumping in the sky. So they tried for them. They sent them paper.
Tried to get him
Here,
to come over.
We sent them paper and we brought the family over here.
Now, what year was this? Do you remember?
They came
Was this right before?
in 35 or 36, they came into America. Joined.
Okay, so that was like right when things just
Yeah,
pretty
they-
much were getting started.
They saved their lives in Hitler.
Right.
He was not born German, he was a Russian born.
Mm-hmm.
And really the first thing they did is they chased the Incanos. The real Germans, was different. But then, she went to Germany, she stayed there, 3 children she had. The person passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And then she had a girl and this, the cousin Jochen. He was 8 years old when he came here.
He was 8. And how old's her girl?
She was about 10 also. She's about not even 2 years different.
Mm-hmm.
Elena, we were lucky we brought them over here.
Right. So then everyone was here in America, your
Yeah.
family.
That's right.
And you were all in New York?
In Brooklyn, New York, over there, he brought some money from there, so he got a home.
Okay.
And it was a 2-family home. They rented out the house. And they lived on the first floor.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids started school, and they go up here and their friends.
And what were you doing at this time? Were you working or?
I don't remember what I did. We left in New York. He came here first, and my sister. So
You came
here, my father took us out before.
Your sister, right?
And my sister,
Right, and then you
because my
sent
sister
for
came
her.
Later, a
When
few
then-
years.
Okay.
And they were locking to bring him over here. He
Right.
could have taken him away who knows where.
Now, what did you say your father was doing at the time? What did he do?
Working, I don't remember what it is.
You don't remember straight. Did your mom keep working?
No, they didn't. He had like a...
Oh, okay. Was it like a store?
Yeah, they fix the stoves, you know.
A repair shop, a general repair shop, and that's what your father did then, right? And people
Yeah.
would bring in things.
And then, you know, when my sister came here, and the kids and the brothers 8 years old, and they all was now in 10. A year and something, all of it. So we were glad we could get them here. And then, when I got married, I came here to Russia.
Okay, so you stayed with your parents until you were married, right?
Yeah, we lived with them together.
How old were you when you got married to Bill Franklin?
Oh, about 50 years. That's a bit.
Well, you came over to America when you were 21. How many years later was it until you saw fireworks?
3, 4 years later.
So 3, 4 years, so you were about, say, 25, around there.
Like it.
And how did you feel about moving to Washington?
Mostly here. We went there and we make a living. See, we couldn't get no job over there. They work in the shop.
Mm-hmm.
And here I got the store. We lived in the back of the store.
So it's pretty much go where you
Yeah.
can make a buck.
Only one rent we could pay. We couldn't pay 2 rent.
Right. Now I want to ask you a question. When you came over to America from Russia, from Warsaw, on the boat, where did you come to America? Did you come to Staten Island?
No, we came to there's pier in 42nd
Mm-hmm.
New York. That's where the boats come in.
Is that called Ellis Island?
I went to Ellis Island, but my sister came to that
Here.
and the pier, and over there was the immigration department taking up all their documents and
Mhm.
everything. But I was in Ellis Island, and my father came to pick me up. Somebody has to be here to come and pick you up.
Right.
That's why with my mother and my brother.
So can you tell me a little about Ellis Island?
Oh,
What
no,
is it?
You know, it's everything for everybody. You see, there's big long tables, we eat together. The way you sleep, I don't remember very much. And on the boat, I was 6.
Oh, you were
Yeah.
From, now was that from seasickness or from the food?
That's it. Sick.
You were
I was
seasick.
very sick on the boat.
How long did it take to get over to America?
About 10 days.
So for 10 days you were
From Europe to America.
losing your cookies, huh, Granny?
Yeah. So
Well-
anyway, we came here and we came to Ellis Island. That's
Mhm.
where they took all our papers and passports, and then they let us get. My father came and picked us up to take us home.
Mm-hmm.
See?
So what was your maiden name, by the way?
Pepper,
Tepper?
T-E-P-P-R.
T-E-P-P-E-R. Tepper. When you married Bill Franklin and you moved to Washington to make a buck,
Yeah.
did you go back often? Did you go to
We
see your
used to go
family?
visit my mother,
You did go?
and I kind of marveled. He was the first grandchild.
Oh.
And you know, he was almost born there. We came into their house and he was born. And then we had to leave for Washington. My mother was very sour. She used to come every 2 weeks and sometimes see us.
Mm-hmm. So she would come down here and
Yeah.
you would go up there.
Once we went over there and she came over here. Because I'm a kind of marvel now, was the first grandchild.
I see.
Because she didn't know my sister's children. And they were born in Germany.
Right. And they were older too,
Yeah,
by that
and
time.
he was the only grandchild that she knew.
From the start.
Mhm.
From the start.
And that's how we lived through. We had good times and bad times. And you look back, you don't even feel like going back.
So what do you think of your life in Washington? Are you glad you
Oh,
came
here
here?
too. We came here. At first we couldn't make no living in the store. And until we worked ourselves out. It took a little time.
And now
Now we got
you're
we're
sitting
old.
on the top of the world, Granny,
Now we're
here at
old.
White Oak Towers.
We're old and sick and disgusted and that's it.
You have anything to add? What do you think of your family now that you have?
My family, oh God, healthy and happy. I hope you all get married now. So I thought for this time, I have some grandchildren. Which I didn't.
Grandchildren, you mean
Yeah.
great,
Great.
great
Yeah,
grandchildren.
But,
Sorry, I stay behind this row, please, audience. Now, don't get out of hand. We're all
we
ministers.
lived through plenty. Don't kid yourself. We didn't have it all the time good.
But you did have some good times.
Yeah.
I can imagine,
The
Granny.
best time is here.
Best
Yeah.
time was
Here.
White Oak Towers here.
Yeah, we're better off than we used to be then.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the girl goes around and don't break that lazy good for nothing.
Who is that? Who are you talking
He
about?
doesn't want to work anymore. The boss.
Oh, the boss. The boss.
That's what he calls himself.
So you're happy with your life here then?
I have to be. What can I do? Not happy, nobody can help.
Well, Granny, before we wrap this up,
Yeah.
is there anything you want to say? I mean, do you realize that these great grandchildren of yours will be seeing
Who's
this?
going to live that long?
That's the point. Who's going to live
The
that long?
grandchildren will see him. Well, I'm very happy to live long. You're all happy and healthy. That's the main thing. And I hope you make a good living for yourself to be happy too.
Thank you. And thanks for talking with us. Wave goodbye.
Bye, Charlie.